All right, this is episode 4 of Mind Matters with KJ. And today I have a very special guest, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. Her name is Tasia Roth, and she is a therapist. Tasia, can you tell us about what got you into therapy, how you became a therapist, like your whole journey?
My whole journey in a nutshell started clear back in high school when they had you do the career test, and I always tested for social services, but I felt that meant DCFS, and so I completely ignored that and went an entire different direction and did business and accounting. Many years later, I ended up working for an adoption agency and learned that social work was more than just DCFS, and that I could be a therapist. And so I went back to school and got my master's in clinical social work. And once I was finished with that, we moved up here and I started working, and I'm now fully licensed, which is called an LCSW. A lot of people, it just means that I've gone 2 years after being graduated and met all these requirements, and I no longer have to be supervised. So
Oh, very cool. So, what got you into the adoption agency before becoming a therapist?
I was tired of for-profit companies because all they were focusing on a lot of times was money, 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 money. How can I get more? Why am I losing so much? And I just didn't like it. I didn't like how people were treated, and that people often were the ones sacrificed for that money. And so I decided to go into nonprofit, and adoption's always been near and dear to my heart. I'm an adoptee myself, and so I've always wanted to give back in some way. And so it was a really, really incredible job and awesome experiences.
I love that about you. Adoption is near and dear to me too, because we've
Mhm.
adopted 2 of our children. And so that is awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about what your specialties are?
Yes. So some of my specialties primarily are in trauma and attachment. I did a lot of trauma work prior during my undergrad, as well as working with individuals with autism and crisis work. So those are all things that I enjoy doing and things that I have experienced, but I've really started to hone in and to focus more on trauma and attachment work, because I feel like a lot of us, even if we haven't had any sort of trauma or big T's, have some sort of attachment stuff going on, just because it's just who we are as people. We attach and we form relationships, and sometimes that just needs a little bit of help.
Very interesting. I think this is going to be really interesting to cover in regards to bipolar disorder, since that's what we talk about on this podcast the most.
Mhm.
I heard, and I want to hear your take on it, that one of the main therapies for trauma is called EMDR. What does that stand for? I can't remember.
It stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It basically tries to replicate a similar state of REM, where your brain is a little bit more flexible and a little bit more fluid in accessing traumatic events or memories and trying to connect them in pieces. It's just your brain and your body trying to understand what happened and to sort of heal itself. And it is one of the primary I would say modalities used for trauma work, and it it is really, really awesome, but it's not always for everyone.
Okay, in regards to bipolar, is it for a person with bipolar? Why or why not?
It would really depend on that person. I have several clients with multiple different diagnoses, and sometimes it's a little too much. It's too intense. And then also, due to the mood swings that come with bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorders, it can sometimes trigger one of those flips in the mood swings and can be really intense. And so EMDR is already intense, added with a bipolar mood swing shift intensity, it can be overwhelming. And that is really off-putting to a lot of individuals. And so I like to just dip my toe in as we go. And I go really, really slow compared to most therapists. I think some therapists go way too quickly and don't provide an opportunity for individuals with bipolar to see if it works for them or not. And they just throw them into the deep end and then they're drowning, and it's not good.
Having an episode. So what are some other options if that's not a good option for them?
I think the most common one of that would be trauma-focused CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, which is very standard. Everybody does it. However, something that was really interesting in a recent training, it was a trauma training I did in the fall of last year with the leading trauma expert. His name is Bessel van der Kolk. He really, really, really emphasized the need for us therapists not to just jump to EMDR as the first thing, that instead the primary focus in helping individuals with trauma, no matter diagnoses, is to help them feel comfortable in their bodies here and now. And that can be done through a lot of really awesome ways, such as exercise, yoga, meditation, deep breathing, different things that don't even include EMDR, because the goal is to remind yourself that even though that trauma is triggering or whatever it may be is triggering, here right now we're okay, we're safe, and we have the skills to calm and ground our bodies.
And CBT, correct me, well, educate me, helps give those skills so that you can be present, right?
It can, yes. I tend to use more DBT when it comes to those types of skills. So DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. It was designed and created originally for individuals with borderline personality disorder. However, I feel like it is an excellent modality, and I use it for all of my clients, regardless of their diagnoses, because I feel like CBT is what you think is how you act, and how you act is how the world perceives you. So it's more on the thinking patterns. DBT, I feel like, is more, okay, I need to learn how to identify what is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I need? How do I meet that need in an adaptive and healthy way myself? Or how do I communicate it in an effective, appropriate way to someone else? And so that's how DBT, I feel like DBT and CBT coincide really well together in helping a person get to that place of grounding.
Very interesting. I love that therapists have so many tools in their kit to help people. And something that I wanted to talk about today is the difference between a life coach and a therapist, and how they can complement each other, but just so people know that they are very different. And I'm actually certifying in life coaching because of the skills that have helped me so much, but therapy has helped me so much too. They have both helped me. And I don't like this nitpicky, fighty feeling that I sometimes feel between therapists and coaches, because I think that they can be part of a team to help somebody. So what do you think are the big differences? And how
that's a
compliment?
It's a really good question. And I agree. I also don't like the nitpickiness. I think sometimes it even happens in the therapy world between different types of therapists. But really and that's one reason I love where I work as well, is it's a really whole body approach. It's taking all aspects of a life and trying to help an individual. And so I feel like life coaching and therapy together can be really helpful for a person, because my understanding of life, of being a life coach, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know everything, you have, I feel like, a better flexibility or a greater flexibility to literally meet people where they are, or to help people with these individual challenges that they're going through in order to become what they want to become, or to achieve the goal that they want to achieve. Me, it's a little bit more sterile. They come to my office, they have a set time, it's only for an hour. My clients have the unique opportunity where I do DBT, they can reach out to me outside of therapy, but it doesn't replace therapy. And so it makes it really difficult. For example, I have a client who needs help opening her mail, and I can't go to her house. I have an entire day full of sessions to go and help her get this important task done to help alleviate a lot of anxiety for her. Whereas I feel like you would probably have a better opportunity or outlet to do that. And people need that help. They need that support outside of therapy. And I think it's awesome.
Yeah, so therapy is a regulated profession. Like there's ups and downs of everything, and life coaching is unregulated. So you know that when you go to a therapist, like they are following rules that
Yes.
the government mandates, and so there's a safety with that. Um, being what is the word I just used?
Regulated.
Regulated, yeah. Being unregulated gives you some opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have, but also there's some downside to that. You need to make sure that you're doing your research and just shopping around for the right coach. But that's with a therapist too. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought it up because I feel like sometimes people have a misconception about therapy that, oh, I had a horrible therapist experience. Therapy isn't for me. That's almost like you're going to a restaurant, you have one meal you didn't really like, so you just never go back there when there's 50 other options. In fact, in every single one of my sessions, the very first time I meet with someone, I tell them, if after 2 or 3 sessions you're not feeling a click, because you know when you click with somebody, and I said, if you're not feeling it, if you can tell me, or if you can tell, if it's a minor, if you can tell a parent, I said, I would rather you be with someone that you're going to click with and feel comfortable with and be able to trust, than for this to be a miserable experience for both of us, because I'm not going to get butt hurt, and if I did, that's my own issue, not their issue. And second of all, I just feel like it's really okay to therapist shop, to find the one that works for you, just like you would do any other sort of professional, such as a dentist or a doctor. We all kind of shop for those as well. It's the same thing.
I love that. Well, that's amazing. Let's just end on the note of stigma, since that's
Mm-hmm.
my main goal, and I know that's one of your main goals too, is breaking down
Mm-hmm.
the stigma of having mental health issues. What would you say to that?
I think stigma is a big issue, especially here in the United States. I can't speak elsewhere, but and even if we want to hone in closer into our state where we live, the idea of maybe not being perfect or not being able to handle everything makes you somehow less than, where, and especially when it comes to mental health. But if you have a physical health issue, that's not as stigmatized. Like going to the doctor weekly, if you have some sort of heart condition or taking medication for your heart condition, is widely accepted and widely supported. Whereas going to therapy weekly, taking medications daily for our moods is somehow not cool. It's not acceptable. And I don't get it. And it's really frustrating because we are not our mental illnesses. They're just a part of who we are. And it's scary, I think, for people looking at individuals with mental illness, but also individuals with mental illness themselves. There is a lot of stigmas and negative beliefs associated with it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to go back and address what you're saying, the state we're in. So Tasia and I obviously know each other personally, and we both live in the state of Utah. And I think what you're referring to, the culture here is very religious. And
Mm-hmm.
so that breeds a perfectionist thing. And I don't think that it would just, I haven't lived many other places. But I know that that's one thing that can factor in is sometimes religious culture. That's not to say religion's a bad thing, but it does breed this perfectionist culture.
Mhm.
And actually, that's not something that I was even thinking about going into very deeply, but do you have anything like else about that that you feel you want to say?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, and if anybody is listening, is that it's okay to be authentic and it's okay to be real and it's okay not to be perfect because we're human. And that's part of being human. And you can't have a true connection with another human being unless you are going to be authentic and genuine. And so if you're unwilling to be raw and vulnerable, you're going to feel very lonely. And I think all of us have experienced what loneliness is like, especially after COVID and quarantining and everything. Nobody wants to feel lonely. That is an awful feeling. And sometimes we get in our own way. And so when it comes to that perfectionism, I struggled and sometimes still do. And it's just checking and reminding ourselves that we're human and that it's okay not to be perfect.
I love that message. I love it so much. So my last thing is, where can people find you, Tasia, if they are looking for a therapist in Utah?
I'm currently working for a wonderful clinic called A New Clinical Practitioners. We're located in Draper, Utah. I love it. It's LGBTQ plus friendly. It's a little bit more progressive in some of its treatments and modalities. We offer psychiatric medication management as well as just regular physical health checkups. We have a psychologist, a nutritionist. We offer ketamine, and then we also offer mental health therapy all in one place. So it's a really awesome team approach in helping individuals who are struggling with mental illness and have to see all these different people anyway. It kind of helps collaborate it and keep it in one place to decrease that stress that comes when trying to figure things out, which I'm sure you've experienced and know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I actually realized we're wrapping up, but I forgot to have you, we started going into it and I didn't have you expand on why some people are diagnosed as having trauma
Oh.
when really they're bipolar, or having bipolar when really they just have trauma issues. Can you actually talk on that?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I have seen quite commonly, I will have an individual come in and they feel like they're bipolar because often when you have trauma, you will have a fight, flight, or freeze response. But in addition to that, complex PTSD looks really different than just traditional PTSD. And you can follow my Instagram. It's called Therapy Talk with Tasia. I share a lot of really cool things, but complex PTSD is something newer coming out in the mental health community. And some of the symptoms do mimic bipolar-like symptoms. There are moments of depression. There's moments of what feels like a manic episode. You feel totally dysregulated. You feel like you're not connected with your body. There's a lot of similarities. And so it can be really tricky navigating those things. And unfortunately, because of insurance, we have to slap a label on really quickly, which I hate. But I always like to say it with my clients as, this can change. This isn't set in stone. This is just what it's looking like, or this is what you've told me someone else did, so I'm using it. It doesn't necessarily mean I will keep it. But then also vice versa, because sometimes someone will come in with lots of trauma. So we're doing this trauma work when really they may have trauma and bipolar disorder, which I've also seen. And so that may prolong that individual from getting the medical help that they could use with prescriptions or whatever, or holistic or healing it. So it's a really easy thing to miss. And so it's just important to make sure if you are trying to question or trying to figure out which is which, be open and honest with whoever it is you're talking about. And it's okay if it changes, that diagnosis.
That was so good. As you were talking, it made me think about my own journey and how it takes a long time to get an accurate bipolar diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So I received my diagnosis in 2016 after being hospitalized. But even then, once I was discharged from the hospital, my doctor said, this doesn't necessarily mean that. And I didn't know what he meant. I was like, it's written on the paper. What do you mean it doesn't mean that? And he's just got a gentle heart. I love my doctor. He just didn't want me to label myself, like, don't put yourself in a box. But we went for a longer time without the right medication. And
Right.
that's just, sometimes, just like you're trying to find the right therapist and team of people to help you, medication is another thing that takes a long time sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And once I finally got on lithium, for me, seeing the difference that made solidified it for me. I was like, the proof is in the pudding.
Right.
And so, anyways, and also, even though and I still love him and I still go to him, I have, my general practitioner and my psychiatrist, I think maybe he was afraid for me to ever say it out loud, but here I am making this podcast. Maybe he wasn't afraid, but a lot of people are judged. It's the stigma that we're talking about. And he didn't want me to judge myself. He didn't want society to judge me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm here to own it so that society can stop judging.
I love that.
So, all right. So what is your Instagram one more time?
It's Therapy Talk with Tasia. Sorry, my cat decides that she wants to come say hi.
She's beautiful. Let me see her face.
Here, Mitzi, they want to say hi.
I love
She's just a little calico.
And what, once again, is the title of where you work, if people want to call there?
It's called ANEW, ANEW, Clinical Practitioners.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much, Tasia. That was very helpful.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being on here. This is a passion of mine, trying to break down that stigma. Myself, I struggle with mental health, and so I try to be honest and real, and hopefully this can help someone and point them in the right direction.
All right. And then I'll stop it right there. That's where I'll splice it out. And anyways, I think that went good. Like, I was wrapping it up. I was like, wait, I've got more questions. But it was still like really good information. I think that was awesome. So thank you. I appreciate it.
That was great. Yeah. And sorry about Maisie there at the end. She knows how to make an entrance.
I'm going to splice stuff out for the audio for the podcast, but I'll send you the YouTube link once I've got out.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you've seen it. There's this meme, and it's like the only way to have a video conference with a cat, and it has the cat taped up on the wall.
Because it will always be there. I know. My cat, it's like, why do you have to be this close to me? What is your problem?
You've been ignoring me for the last 3 hours, but now that I'm right here, you have to be right there.
Attention. Yeah, it's so weird. Whenever we fold towels or something and put them in our closet, because that's where our focus is, our cat will suddenly like jump up on the shelf where we're doing it. Like, oh, this is where you're paying attention. Look at me.
Yep.
So funny. Okay. Well, I'm going to get editing this and I will send it to you ASAP.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kristen. This was so great. And yes, let me know if I can ever help any other way.
Okay. I definitely will. And let's get together.
Yes, let's do. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.